Hi everyone, Amber here from Majestic. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am so excited to show you this new bag. It is from Belle Originals and it is called the Essential Travel Bag, and I'm absolutely obsessed. I sewed up the pattern and did the tutorial exactly as it was written, and I have timestamps in the description, so you should be able to follow along with the pattern, no problem at all. So I chose to use Theratex for the exterior and left it on interface. And then for all the lining, I did a waterproof canvas. I used the Pro Tough from Walmart, also on interface. So it features a slip pocket in the front that I divided down the center. It has the tabs on the side for the D-ring for a crossbody strap, as well as two handles, which I use seatbelt webbing. On the back side, it has a trolley sleeve pocket, which fits perfectly over the handles of your suitcase. And I did sew an extra line of stitching on the bottom here, and it creates like a little tiny slip pocket that you could put like pens or something else in, which is kind of cute. And so the top features a recessed zipper, and then when you open it up, it has two interior pockets. It has a zipper pocket on one side and a slip pocket on the other side that I also split down the middle. The bottom is a square bottom, so you're not like doing, even though it has like the side pieces, it's not like a full gusset. The pieces fit perfectly. It comes out beautifully. I cannot wait to travel with this. I think I'm going to take it when I go to Sew Whatever Summit. It's a great size bag. It does say it will fit like a 15-inch laptop. I have not put mine in it, only because I probably wouldn't travel with mine. I usually put my iPad. But I really, really love how the pattern came out. It is written very well. Thank you so much, Cindy, for allowing me to film your pattern. I hope I did it justice, and I hope that you all enjoy making this pattern. If you do, please feel free to leave a comment, let me know. And as always, if you're not already subscribed, I would love if you subscribe to my channel or comment, give me a thumbs up. All those things help my channel grow, and I appreciate it so much. Enjoy the tutorial. Okay, so I have all my pieces laid out for the exterior and interior of the bag. I have kind of just positioned them to try to get everything within the camera frame, as this is a large bag, so the pieces are quite large. And to help me, I have put little sticky notes. So for example, this is exterior piece A, and then I have the lining behind it. So for the exterior of my bag, I am using Theratex from Fabric Therapy, which has this white, it's like bonded already, so you don't really need interfacing at all, and it's like a waterproof fabric. It almost has like a ripstop feel to this side, but that white bonded fabric in the back gives it a little bit of support. And then behind it, you can see I have the lining. And for all the lining, I am using waterproof canvas. This is the Pro Tough from Walmart. It does have the PVC backing. So for all of my lining pieces, I have cut pieces of that, and I did not interface it. So if you are using a lighter weight fabric, you will probably want to interface your lining. I chose these materials specifically as this is a travel bag. It has the trolley sleeve to kind of fit over your suitcase. So I feel like it's going to get a lot of wear and tear. And then both of these materials are easily wipeable, cleanable. And I feel like that makes a very good material for a travel bag for me. So we have our main panels. I have my lining slip pocket, and so I cut that with the outside material just to give a little pop of color inside, and then the lining for it. Over here I have the exterior slip pocket, have the exterior and lining gussets, lining zipper pockets. For the bottom pieces, I did them both out of the waterproof canvas. We have our exterior trolley sleeve, our recessed zipper pieces, and then our crossbody strap carriers, or I call them D-ring connectors. So I wrote both just so I would know. And so these are all the materials. I am sewing the pattern exactly as it is written. So I have cut out every single piece as directed within the pattern. And now, as far as hardware and webbing, I have this 1.5 inch black seatbelt webbing. I believe I have it linked in my Amazon shop. It works really well, so I'm very happy with it. So I have my 2 handles cut to length. This will be my crossbody strap cut to length. I have my hardware 1.5 inch snap hooks, a slider, and the D-rings. Those are all from Mormino. And then I have the size 5 zipper tape. This is the lilac with the gunmetal zipper I carry in my shop, and 2 standard zipper pulls that I also carry in the shop. So that's what I'm going to be using for webbing, hardware, zipper. And then now I'm going to show you the tools that I might use. Okay, and now as far as tools, I have plenty of clips. I have a lighter to singe the edges of my webbing and zipper tape, a pair of snips, a seam ripper stiletto combo, 3 different marking pens. This is a water soluble, this is a silver marking pen, and this is a chalk pen. Depending on what I'm working with, I like to use any of those 3. I am using a 90-14 Microtex. I probably could use an 80-12 with the materials, but I just tend to use the 90-14 regardless of what I'm making, unless it's quilting cotton. And then I'm using Tex 35 thread from Wizardry Stitchery. I'm using black and purple, or the lilac color. I'm going to rotate. So if it's on the outside, I'll use the purple. But when it comes to like stitching the webbing and stuff, I'm going to switch it to black so it matches a little bit better. And if there's any other tools or materials that I use, I'll let you know as I go along. So our first step, I have our exterior slip pocket. So I have my exterior and the lining. My lining is right side facing up. And so we are going to put our slip pocket right side facing down. If you have a directional fabric, you want to make sure that you're being mindful of that. We're going to leave a turning hole on the bottom. So I am going to flip this around. And then you can see I have my label here. And we are going to put them right sides together. So I need to remember that this is my bottom. So I'm going to leave a large turning gap. So I'm clipping that first. And I don't know, that's about 6 inches or so. You want to leave enough that you're able to turn this completely right sides out. Okay, and so I'm going to continue clipping all the way around. Then we're going to take this to the machine, and we are going to stitch at the given seam allowance. I'm going to start at the bottom, back stitch, and then go around all 4 sides, ending here, back stitching really well at the bottom. And that is going to leave this turning gap open here. Okay, so I'm going to take that to the machine. Okay, so we have just stitched all the way around and left our turning gap. Now, before I turn it, I cut along the corners at an angle. You don't want to clip your stitching, but it does help the corners sit a little bit better. It's a pretty small seam allowance, so I don't feel like I need to trim that down. If you wanted to trim your seam allowance, you could. Just don't trim it between this turning opening. And then I left it large enough that I can stick my hand right inside, and we're going to turn that right side out. And if you're using like a stiffer material like a vinyl or cork, it might be a little bit more difficult. These are turning very nicely. And so I'm just going to take my time, make sure that I poke everything out. What I also do is I'm running my finger along like the seam to help really poke it out. But then when it comes to the corners, I have a chopstick, and I use that to help poke out the corners. And it's literally just like a wooden chopstick from takeout. So you don't want to use anything pointy, but if you have something that has like a blunt edge to help poke out your corners, that works great. So I'm going to poke out the rest of this off camera just so it doesn't take so much time. But you want to make sure everything is turned out as nice and even as possible. Okay, so I'm back and I have turned this out completely. My corners are poked out nicely. If you're using a material that can be ironed, I definitely recommend giving it a good press to flatten it out. I personally do not like ironing water resistant canvas or Theratex or anything like that. So I'm just going to leave it as is. And we still have our turning hole here. We're not closing it up yet. But what we are going to do is we're going to take it to the machine and we are just going to top stitch across the top here. We're not doing the sides or anything yet, just along the top. And I usually do 1/8 of an inch for my regular top stitching. I'm going to do that here. This is something that you could actually add some rivets on if you wanted. And I recommend maybe doing a 1/4 inch top stitch if you wanted to add some rivets in the side. But for now, I'm going to take it to the machine and do 1/8 of an inch top stitch along the top only. Alright, so I have done a couple things. I have just top stitched across. I don't know if you can kind of see the purple blends in. It's more noticeable from the lining side where you can see the purple on the black. So I still have my turning hole in the bottom, but I have found the center and I have used a chalk line to mark the center of my slip pocket. I have also grabbed one of my panel A pieces, and I am just making sure that my prints are both facing up. I didn't check that before I drew this line. So I have found my center, and you can find the center of the top as well because we're going to center our slip pocket, but I just used the measurement given and drew the line across in chalk on the bottom. I love using chalk because you can just take like a wet wipe or water and it comes out usually really well, but definitely check it first before you use it. But it's like my go-to marking tool. So there's a measurement that we're going to center this pocket both from the bottom and the top and the left and the right. So like I said, I just drew that line on the bottom. And now what I do is I take my 2 index fingers and kind of tug, and that helps this bottom fold in so we can close up our pocket. And we're going to close up our pocket on that turning hole when we top stitch this in place. Now I'm using materials that if I were to pin this, it would leave the hole. So they make like sew tights, which are like magnets, or some people use magnetic name badges. I definitely need to purchase some. But what I do in a situation like this is I honestly just use like some Scotch tape and kind of just help hold it in place. I guess it comes from being a teacher. I have the tape. So it's not perfect. It doesn't say stuck. So this is not something that you want to like really carry around and move a lot. This is just to kind of hold it into place. And then when I get to my machine, I'm going to make sure that I'm more like realigning this, making sure that it is still accurate. So I'm just putting a few pieces to help hold it. And then what we're going to do is we are going to take this to the machine and we're going to start at the top, backstitch really, really well. This is our slip pocket, so it's going to get tugged on. So I'm going to backstitch at the top, come down here. When I get to the bottom, I'm going to backstitch again just to keep it secure. Come across the bottom here. That's going to sew up this turning hole. backstitch at the end, and then continue up this left-hand side, backstitching finally at the top. So I'm going to help kind of keep it even. The measurements are all given in the pattern. You can double check that it's the correct amount from the bottom, from the top, and you should be good to go. If you want to add an extra line of stitching along the bottom, you can, because like she says in the pattern, this is a slip pocket, and you know, the more stitching, the more sturdier it will be. So I'm going to take it to the machine and stitch along those 3 sides. Okay, so I have just attached the pocket. If you look closely, you can see the top stitching, and I did 2 lines of top stitching across the bottom for extra security. And while I was at the machine, I sewed a line up the middle following that center chalk mark to divide this into 2 slip pockets. So you could divide it or leave it as one. That's your preference. And I'm just showing you the back. The thread shows up much better on the white background, just so you can get an idea, and you can see down here where I did that double line. The other thing I want to point out is mine is a little bit, pocket is more towards the top than the bottom. It's not quite centered. That's okay, because I still have plenty of seam allowance on both sides. So if yours is not perfectly centered, it's okay. So I did the measurement, but I think I should have dropped it down a tiny bit here. But we're done with our exterior slip pocket. I'm going to set it aside, and we're going to need our trolley sleeve, the exterior, and the lining. All right, so now we have our trolley sleeve, exterior, and lining. So we're going to do similar to our slip pocket. We're going to put right sides together. So my exterior with the right side facing down, and my lining right side facing up. That PVC backing is towards the back. And we are going to clip and sew our long edges. So I'm just aligning the bottom first, and then I'll flip it around and align the top. I'm just making sure it's easier this way because it's like facing me, so I can see it. And so for this, we are only sewing along the top and the bottom, the long edges. We're not sewing the short side. So basically we're making like a tunnel. Okay, and so I'm going to bring this to the machine, and I'm going to stitch my regular stitch length across the top and the bottom. Okay, so now that the top and bottom are sewed, we are just turning this right side out. And because it's like a tunnel, our shorter sides are left open. It should not be that difficult. And then you want to make sure, if you want, you could press the seams open first before doing this. I prefer to just kind of roll them underneath my hands. I will sometimes take my chopstick and press up into that seam to really kind of poke it out. But definitely giving it a good press if you have a material that you can iron. So once you have it as flat as possible and you're happy with it, you are going to take it back to the machine and top stitch along the top and along the bottom. And you can do either, like I said, for my top stitching, I like to do either 1/8 of an inch, or if you want to add rivets in later or anything, you might want to do a larger top stitch. All right, so I have just top stitched along the top and the bottom. You can see it better from the lining side. So we are going to need this trolley sleeve and our exterior main panels. And now there's a couple things that I am going to do off camera. We are going to be attaching this. So I need to find centers. I'm going to mark my centers of the panel, the exterior panel on the top and the bottom. And so the top and the bottom, and I'm also going to mark them on the left and the right side. And I'm going to also find the center of my trolley pocket on the short sides. And I'm going to find my center and draw a chalk line down the middle. It's going to be used as a reference point, not stitching. So I'm going to find all those centers off camera so I'm not giving away measurements, and then I'll come back on and show you. All right, so I have my trolley sleeve here. I have marked my center line, and then when we attach this, in order to make that sleeve, we're going to have to sew at given measurements from that center line. So I actually drew out the 2 lines using that given measurement in the pattern. I've also marked, it's a little hard to see because of using the chalk, but I have marked my centers on the left and the right, and I have marked all my centers on the left and the right, and the top and the bottom of my exterior. So we are going to take our trolley sleeve and match up those center points, the edges. And so I am just clipping the left side first. I'm coming kind of close, and that way I can see to make sure that I'm clipping appropriately or accurately. And the same thing here. If you need to like turn this or anything, definitely do that to help you to make sure that you can see it. You want it as straight as possible. Okay, so once you have it clipped, we're going to bring this to the machine and we're going to sew a couple places. We are going to attach it on the left and the right hand sides, given the seam allowance in the pattern. It's more of like a basting stitch to hold it in place. And then we are going to stitch along these left and right lines. She gives you the measurement from the center. So that, again, that's why I marked the center and the 2 lines here. And we are going to backstitch very well at the top and the bottom, because this is where the handle of like a suitcase is going to slide through. So it is going to get pulled on. Now, she has a great suggestion that if you wanted to make these 2 little channels here, like almost like a pocket for pens, you could add a line of stitching at the bottom. So you could either leave it open and they would not be usable, or add a line of stitching. And I kind of like that idea. So I'm going to add a line of stitching only from the exterior to this marked line, and then from the exterior here to this marked line. It's very important that we're leaving the top and the bottom open for our trolley sleeve for the handle of a suitcase. And I'm just popping on to clarify one thing. Here I said to do a basting stitch. That is what I'm going to do. In the pattern, she actually doesn't stitch along the edge because we're going to be putting on some side panels. So you could either not sew the sides now, or you could do that basting. But for me, I prefer to baste it just to help hold everything in place. So that is what I'm going to do. But I just wanted to clarify that along with the written instructions. Okay, so I have just finished attaching the trolley sleeve. I have base stitched along the edges, and I have stitched down those measurements, leaving that opening, making sure that I backstitch really well at the top and the bottom. And I also stitched across here to give myself that little pocket to help you visualize. This is what it looks like on the back side. You can see the vertical sewing lines and the bottom of the pocket. You should not see any stitch lines in the middle. If you do, that means you have sewn your trolley pocket. So definitely make sure that it pops up and open at this time. Okay, so our next step is we need our side panels. So I have the exterior side panels, and we are going to put these on the left and the right hand side. And so I have just lined them up here. Let's start with my right hand side. So I like laying everything out so I can see it. And then we're going to attach it right sides together. So I'm going to clip them in place. So if you base stitch it along the edge here, this is what is going to seal up that edge. So if you base stitched, it will get enclosed in the seam allowance. If you left these sides open, this is what's going to seal it up. Okay, so I have put the right hand side, and I'm going to do for the same for the left hand side. Like I said, sometimes it's easier to turn it towards me just to make sure that I am matching up the edges very well, especially because my bottom fabric has like a little crease there. Okay. So once you have your side panels clipped, you're going to take it to the machine and you are going to stitch along each side, the left and right hand side, at the given seam allowance. Okay, so I have just attached those side panels, and now I'm opening them up, and we need our slip pocket side, and just double check that you have it where the slip pocket opening is to the top. And we're going to put it right sides together. And starting on the left hand side, I'm just going to match up the edge. And again, I'm just turning it towards me so I can make sure that I see everything. So we're just attaching this front panel just like what we did with the back. Okay. And I'm going to just slide this across to match up this other side here. And again, just making sure the edges are aligned, especially because this one has like a little wrinkle in it that I didn't press out. So I'm making sure that I am pulling it and everything is straight. Okay, so now this will attach that panel. I'm going to take it to the machine and stitch, and just make sure you're pulling it, because if you sew it like this, you're going to accidentally sew your panels together. So just make sure you're pulling it to the right and then to the left to make sure that you are getting the correct pieces sewn. And so I'm going to stitch both of those at the given seam allowance in the pattern. All right, so I have just attached it on. So now it's kind of like one big circle. And sorry, I'm just making sure. I panicked for a second that thinking this was the slip pocket, and I didn't, so I sewed it upside down. All right, so that's the slip pocket. This is the trolley. We're going to leave it right sides facing together. And now we need our face. So in this step, she recommends like stitching on some foam or some double layers of fusible fleece. I'm not going to do that because I kind of like the idea that this is a travel bag, but if I need to, like the materials, I can fold this up a lot. And if I add foam, it's going to make it a little bit more stiff to do that. So if you want that extra structure, definitely do so. But with this PVC back, it's still sturdy enough. It's not going to rip. It's just going to allow it to be more squishy. So now she says to clip it all four sides and then start on a short side and work your way around. And she says that you want to start and stop sewing. There's a measurement in the pattern from each side. So what I find that's easier to do is I'm going to sew my short sides first and then the long side. So if this was like circular, I would work around it like just like sewing all the way around. But I think because this is square, I'm going to do a little bit separately instead of going all the way around. So I'm going to start with my my short sides. So I am putting my lining fabric right sides together with my exterior, or not lining, sorry, base fabric. And so basically, even though the seam is here, I'm lining up those edges, and I'm lining up obviously the short edge. If it's helpful, you could mark the centers of each and line up the centers. All right, so you can see what I mean here. Like my seam allowances are pushed towards the outside, and those edges of that seam allowance line up with the edges of my base. So I'm going to take this to the machine, and I'm going to stitch at the given seam allowance, but I'm only going to stitch from this seam here to this seam over here. I'm not going to go all the way to the edge, just to those prior stitch marks. So I'm actually going to clip both short sides at the same time and do both short sides at the same time, just to time-wise, I think it works better. So I'm just going to clip this real quick. So I'm not worrying about the long edges yet. We're going to do them next. Okay, so again, I'm taking this to the machine. I'm going to sew at the given seam allowance just from one stitch line here to the next. All right, so you can see that I have attached the short sides. And so if I'm looking from the side panel, you can see that I have started and stopped at those seam allowances. And this is going to give us that nice square bottom. And same on this side. So now we're going to attach our long panels, our long sides, in the same exact manner. So we're going to line up our edges. If you want to mark your center, it may help you. I'm just going to flip all the way across. And I'm going to flip the other side, but I just want to show you. So now we're going to do the same exact thing. So we're going to stitch from that stitch line here and ending at this seam allowance over here. Make sure you're back stitching at the beginning and the end really, really well. And I'm just going to clip my other side and do the same thing. I like to pull them apart to make sure that they're taut. You can mark the centers if that's easier, works better for you. Okay, so now that I have both sides clipped, I'm going to go and sew those long edges in the same exact manner at the given seam allowance. And again, backstitching at the beginning and the end, stopping at those vertical seam allowances. All right, so I have just sewed the long sides of the bottom, again, stopping on the left and the right where that vertical seam allowance is. And this should give you a perfectly square bottom. I just find it much easier to do two sides at a time. You could even have done the long sides first and then the short sides. For me, that just works best. I do recommend turning this right side out just to double check. So go ahead and turn it right side out and poke out those corners down at the bottom. And I'm just using my hands for this because it's just to check real quick. So you will see that it has created that perfectly square bottom. And if I poke out this side as well, because you definitely want to check to make sure that everything looks good before you get too far along. The other thing that I would suggest is just also double checking your trolley sleeve to make sure that it fits if you have like a particular suitcase. All right, perfect. So you can see that this is our bottom, and it's almost a perfect rectangle. So I'm very, very happy with how that turned out. So I'm going to put it back. Okay, and so I'm going to set this to the side because now we are going to need our crossbody strap carriers, is what she calls them, or what I usually call them is our D-ring connectors. And so on the wrong side, off camera, I am going to draw a center line going down vertically on each, and then I'm going to come back to show you how to fold them. I'm using the Theratex, which is pretty strong. If you are using like a cotton, you might want to give some interfacing here, because again, these are going to hold our D-rings, so you want to make sure that it's not going to rip on you. This is plenty sturdy enough by itself, but if you think you need some extra interfacing, definitely put it on now. All right, so I have marked my center down both of my D-ring connectors. So we are going to fold to center. If you want to use some double-sided tape to help hold this in place, you can. I'm just going to clip it on each side. And then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch down the left and right hand side. And then we're going to do a second row of stitching at the measurement given. So you should have 4 rows of top stitching going across. And I'm going to do the same for the other side here. All right, so I have just top stitched both of my connectors. So there's 4 rows of top stitching going across. So now we are going to loop it through our D-ring, and it should fit perfectly through our 1.5 inch D-rings. And I'm just going to put a clip on each end. Now this next part is not in the pattern. It's just something that I like to do before attaching them. I am going to take it to the machine and add a row of top stitching across as close to the D-ring as possible. And this is just so my D-ring doesn't try to like turn and flip around. That extra stitching will help hold it in place. This is something you could also put a rivet there to help with. It's just personal choice. You could just leave them like this. I prefer to do that stitching. So I'm going to put a row of top stitching as close as I can to the D-ring. Okay, so I forgot to hit record, but I just put a line of top stitching across. And like I said, it just makes it harder for that D-ring to turn. So now we need our exterior, and we are going to center our D-ring. So I'm just going to eyeball it. Well, I am going to find the center this way. So by folding it in half. Okay, and I see that my center's there. But then I'm going to eyeball it as far as putting my D-ring connector. Now we want to put them facing down. And when we turn them up, this is going to be the side that shows when we turn our bag. So if you have a directional print, you want to make sure you're mindful of that you have the correct way facing down, knowing that once we turn our bag, it's going to be facing up. So I'm just going to clip it in the center here. And you want to leave some overhang. That way it's in the seam and less likely to rip out. So I am going to take that to the machine and then just base stitch this in place and do the same thing for the D-ring on the other side. All right, so I have just base stitched my D-ring connectors on each side. And I moved mine up a little bit more than in the pattern. You could do it the exact measurement. I just like less of my strap showing or connector showing. So that's why I just moved it up a tiny bit. But that is definitely personal preference. So I'm going to move that to the side because our next step is our handles. So I have already marked my center. And then I have marked the given measurement on each one, the distance away from the center. So these are the grab handles. And you probably could leave one flat like this. But in the pattern, she has us match up the center points. So I'm just folding them to center here. and I'm going to clip it. And then where I mark those other 2 points, we are going to stitch them at the machine. So it's kind of like a rolled handle without the tubing and not going all the way. So it just makes it more of like a grab handle like this. So I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to start at that top mark and top stitch all the way down to this mark at the bottom here. And make sure you backstitch really well at the beginning and the end. These are going to be pulled on. I'm going to do the same for both sides. And I did switch out my thread since this is solid black. I switched it for the black thread. That way it will blend nicer for me. So I'm going to take this to the machine and top stitch both of them. All right, so I have both of my handles now. You can see that they're top stitched and held together. So that makes that nice grab handle here. So now we need to baste this onto our exterior. So I have marked, it's a little hard to see, but I have marked the center here in chalk and then another mark here and here. It's a given measurement from that center. So we are going to take our handle, and for the right hand side, I'm lining up my left hand side of my webbing with that mark, and I'm leaving some overhang. That way, if your webbing frays, it's caught in that seam allowance. You never want to put just the ending. You always want to leave some extra if you can. And then you want to make sure that your handle is not twisted. And so now I'm bringing up the left hand side to this far mark over here, and I'm lining up the right hand side of my webbing. And you can use a little ruler and make sure that you have the same amount sticking up on each side. I'm going to check that off camera. So you're going to do this for both sides, and you're just going to take this to the machine and just base stitch it in place on both of these handles. All right, so I have base stitched on the handles on both sides. So you can see here from the interior, it's a little easier to see with that black thread. So now I'm going to set this aside because we're done with our exterior for now, and we're going to start with our lining. All right, so we are working on our lining. I have my lining slip pocket, and for this I chose to use my exterior fabric for the outside of the slip pocket, and then this waterproof canvas for the lining. And I did this just because it's going to give a pop of color in the bag. So what we're going to do is put this right sides together, just like we did with the exterior lining slip pocket. The only difference is that instead of sewing all 3 sides and leaving a turning hole, we're going to do it just like we did with the trolley sleeve and just sew both long sides. We're going to leave both short sides open. So again, I'm going to take it to the machine and stitch along both long sides at the given seam allowance. Okay, so I have stitched both of my long sides. So now we are just going to turn this right side facing out. And if you're using a material that can be ironed, you want to give this a good press. I am going to make sure that I flatten it as nicely as possible, just like we did with the trolley sleeve. And so now, if you're using directional fabric, you need to make sure that you have it facing the correct way. And I'm going to take it to the machine and put a row of top stitching at the top here. I have my black thread in, and I'm just going to switch out the top for the purple just so it blends better and matches the rest of the bag. I'm going to leave the black in the bobbin for now and switch back to the black afterwards, because after this, most of what we'll be doing is with the black lining. So if you want to switch threads or anything, you can definitely do that, or whatever works best for you. So again, I'm going to take it to the machine and just top stitch along the top only. All right, so I have just top stitched along this slit pocket. So now we need one of our lining interior main panels, and we are going to line up our slit pocket with the bottom. If you want to find the centers, you can, but your edges should match up perfectly. And so I'm just going to clip this into place. And we are going to base stitch it on the left and the right hand side. And you can also base stitch it along the bottom. I'll probably do that to just come down and around. And then off camera, I'm going to find the center, and I am going to do a central line of stitching, making sure that I backstitch at the top and the bottom really well to divide this slit pocket. If you wanted to leave it one big slit pocket, you could, or divide it up a different way. I'm just going to split it down the middle, but I don't want to give measurements away, so I'm going to do the measurements off camera. And again, taking that to the machine and just base stitching it in place on the sides. All right, so this slit pocket is all done. I've base stitched on the sides and did my center stitch down the middle. You can see here, this is something if you wanted, you could add rivets for extra support. Not on the edges yet, because those are going to get sewed in, but if you want to do the middle, something you could even do is do like a box of top stitching. But I just did that center line. That works perfect for me, but this is definitely an area that you can be creative with. So I'm going to set this aside and then grab my other lining main panel and my 2 zipper pocket panels. All right, so I have grabbed my main lining panel and my 2 zipper lining panels. And you can see that I have already prepped one of them. So in the instructions, you need to draw a zipper box on the wrong sides. So this is that shiny PVC side, and I have my lining zipper pocket panel piece right sides together with the main lining. So she gives you the measurement in the pattern. I have this tool that I love using from Mormino, and you can put it on and draw your zipper box. This gives you a 7-inch one. This is a little bit larger, so I use this to get the base and then it just extended it on each side. So I really love this tool and highly recommend it. So once you have your zipper box drawn on the wrong side of your pocket lining, you're going to put your pocket lining right sides down, and you can see my center is marked on the pocket and my center is marked on my main panel piece. And there's a measurement that is given that you measure from the top here to the top of your pocket. So I, again, don't want to use pins because I don't want to leave holes in my waterproof canvas. So I have just used some Scotch tape to hold it down. Use whatever works best for you. So now, and again, this is very important that these are right sides together, that this wrong side is facing up, because we are going to sew a zipper box now. And this is going to end up flipping through. So it's very important. So now I'm going to take this to the machine and stitch around this box that I drew. Sometimes when I get close to the corners, I'll drop my stitch length down to like a 2, just to make sure it's very, very precise. So I'm going to take that to the machine and stitch out this box. All right, so I have just stitched all the way around my zipper box. You might have noticed that I changed out my zipper foot to a white foot. That's a Teflon foot. My machine, when I'm sewing on the wrong side of waterproof canvas, when it's this PVC backing, my metal foot sticks. So if you find that your stitches are really close together and you're struggling, I highly recommend a Teflon foot. All right, so now we need to draw a center line in this box, but not going all the way to the end. I am going to draw triangles to the corners. And I like to leave them about maybe like a 1/2 inch. I find like a little bit longer is better, because what we need to do is we are going to turn this right side out. So we want to mark the center, and I like using a seam ripper to kind of rip through a little bit, and then take my scissors to cut that rest of that line. And then you are going to, when you get to that triangle, snip as close to the corner as possible without cutting your threads. And that's going to give you, the closer you can get, the cleaner this type of pocket is going to look. So I'm just going very, very close and making sure I'm not snipping that thread. Okay, so now that we have this opening, we are going to push our zipper pocket lining through all the way. Sometimes I like to flip it over from the back and maneuver it here first, because you need to have the little part for the top and the sides. That's why we want to snip as close to that stitching as possible. And because I'm using waterproof canvas, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of maneuver. If you're using cotton, it might be a little bit easier. And then once you get it through, I'm finger pressing really, really well. If you're using a material that you can iron, I definitely recommend doing that, because you want as straight of box as possible, because this is going to be our zipper box. So I don't know if you can see on camera, but like the lining on the zipper pocket's coming up a little bit, but because I use black for both, it's really kind of just blends together. But if you have a different color lining, you might see it. So that's why, again, you want to get this as square as possible. And you might see it's like pulling a tiny bit on the corners. That means that you might need to snip it a little bit closer. I don't mind if it pulls a tiny bit. It's not a huge deal to me. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for a second, because I am going to grab my zipper tape and my zipper pull, because that will be our next step. All right, so I have grabbed my zipper tape and I have cut it slightly longer than this zipper panel piece. And that's so when we sew it up, I like to catch my teeth in that seam allowance. So first thing I'm going to do is put on the zipper, and I'm just checking. I think this side might be a little bit easier. So I just open it up, and I'm right-handed. So I start on the right-hand side, and I gently put just a couple, like 1 or 2 teeth in on the right, and kind of hold it there and put the left side. And I try to like balance it on top and just push down with my pointer. And after a lot of practice, I've gotten pretty good that it goes on fairly nicely. So now we are going to prep this. I didn't mention in the materials double-sided tape, but I am going to use it, and it does help. My machine hates it though, so I'm putting it only on the very edge of the zipper tape. And this way it will stay out of my seam allowance. So again, just lining this up. Sometimes I have trouble, and it's actually overhanging it a little bit because I don't want it to be like caught in that seam allowance. So that's okay. This is a 1/4 inch size double-sided tape. And so now I'm just going to peel that off, and we're basically going to center this behind our pocket that we just sewed into that opening. So I'm just pulling off this first. And then you want to make sure you have your zipper pull the direction. I like mine opening left to right. So that's the way I have it facing. If you want to reverse it, you can. And so I actually like to turn my sideways so I can see how straight this zipper is. And then with this opening, you want to make sure that this is pressed open to the top and the bottom. We are going to center our zipper. And you want to make sure that your zipper tape is overhanging on the top and the bottom, or at least giving you enough space past our box opening, because we're going to top stitch. We need to catch our zipper tape. That's why I cut mine longer than this lining panel. And so I am just centering mine in the, with the teeth here on the bottom, and then kind of just maneuver along and straighten it. And that double-sided tape will really help hold it in place. So this might take a few minutes for you to really get this in a way that is lined up, that looks straight. You can see mine's kind of bowing out a little bit to the left, so I'm going to try to fix that. It being an interior zipper tape, I'm not so worried about it. This is one of the reasons why some people will use overlays, because then you won't see this box. Okay, so once you have it straightened, I'll probably play with this a little bit off camera before I top stitch it to straighten it some more. But once you have it correct and how you want it, you're going to take it to the machine and top stitch all the way around this box. What you want to do is when you're going by the pull, make sure you're moving it forward or back so you don't get like a little bubble in your top stitching. And I'm using black thread, so I'm just going to back stitch. If you wanted, you could pull your threads to the back to hide it. But an interior pocket and thread matching, I'm just going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. So you are top stitching around this whole box here. Right, so I have just stitched all the way around my pocket. I backstitched over here because I used black thread. It blends in really, really well. Like you can barely tell. So I'm pretty happy with it, and it looks pretty even. So you want to make sure that your zipper can open and close, that you didn't accidentally like miss anything. And this is what it looks like from the back. So now we are going to take our second zipper pocket lining piece and put it right sides down. And so we are just matching up our entire pocket. And this is what our whole bag is going to be turned through. So I'm putting my clips again really far apart because I want to leave a turning gap in this pocket. So I'm stitching the sides, and this is why I like to have my zippers longer, because when we close up this zipper pocket, I want to make sure that my zipper is caught in that seam. Even though it's top stitched here and it shouldn't go anywhere, for me it just gives a little bit of extra security. Okay, so once you have clipped all the way around, you're going to flip it over. And we are going to take it to the machine. And I'm actually going to start on the bottom left here because I'm going to only sew about an inch in. So I'm going to come down an inch to rotate, come down all the way, get to the top, rotate again. And you might see here that it doesn't line up perfectly. Sometimes with the zipper, when you do that first pocket, it doesn't come through all the way. So if your seam is not matching up your edges, don't worry so much. Just make sure that you are sewing the top. As long as your pocket's closed, it's not a problem. So I'm going to continue down here, pivot, come down the right hand side, and then about an inch here on the bottom. So you can see that I'm folding this main panel in as I'm going to be sewing. That way I'm only sewing this back pocket. And again, I'm going to put my Teflon foot on so that way it slides smoothly over this PVC. Okay, so this is closing up our pocket, except we are leaving a turning hole in the bottom. So do not stitch this closed, and make sure you're leaving a large enough gap to turn your bag through. All right, so we have just sewed our zipper pocket closed. So from the back, you can see I left that turning gap down here. I do have the extra material or the extra zipper, so I'm just going to trim that down a tiny bit on each side. And then I'm going to open up my zipper now so I don't forget. This is how we're going to turn our bag, so we need to be able to reach through. If you want, just double check that everything looks good, and that you didn't sew your zipper pocket closed accidentally some way or anything like that. I'm going to set it to the side and grab our stuff for our recessed zipper. All right, so I have all my pieces. I have my 2 exterior recessed zipper panels, my 2 lining, my zipper tape, which is extra long. This is a different way than I've ever done a recessed zipper panel. We're going to have 2 zipper tabs instead of turning one side back. So I have not put my zipper pull on yet. I'm going to put it on at the very end. So on the back of all 4 of these pieces, I have marked the line, and we are folding each side into that given measurement. So what I did is I just doubled that measurement, so I know that I'm folding this into the correct amount. And so we're going to do this to all of our pieces. And this way we do not have any raw edges. So I'm going to show you on one side, and then I'll repeat for the other off camera. So I'm just moving that extra lining. I'm going to do it with this one here. And so something to note is that if you have a directional fabric, which I do, and I cut mine so that way my pieces also match up. So I want to make sure that I am putting these in the correct direction. So first things first is I'm going to start with my lining fabric, and I'm going to put my zipper on top of it. And you can mark the centers of your zipper tape in the center of your panel, but I'm just estimating. And if you want to base this into place, you can, but I'm going to do it all in one step. So I'm just clipping it here because it's helpful for me to line everything up first. Okay, so my recessed lining is right side facing up. My zipper teeth is right side facing up. And now when I do this panel, I want to make sure mine is facing this way because I have a directional print. So I am folding mine onto this. So that way when we stitch it and we fold this open, it's going to be like this is what's going to happen. So again, it's right side facing up of the lining, zipper teeth facing up, and then my exterior fabric right side facing down. So you're basically making a zipper sandwich. And I am now going to make sure I line up the edges here. It's really important if you do not want your edges showing. So I'm just adjusting my clips there. And now I'm just using the same clips that I've already clipped the lining into place to gently move across and clip this exterior fabric. If you're using the same fabric, this is not a big deal which way everything is facing as far as like directional. So you don't have to worry quite as much. It probably would have helped to baste it, but I'm gonna live on the wild side. And then I'm just making sure that I'm clipping this really good. Okay, so now I'm gonna bring this to the machine and I'm gonna put on a zipper foot and stitch at the given seam allowance along this side here. Make sure that your edges stay turned in so we don't have a raw edge on the side. All right, so I have just stitched at the given seam allowance. So now we are gonna fold this open so it is wrong sides together. And we're going to top stitch along here. And I always make sure that I really pull back, especially if I'm using waterproof canvas with the PVC backing, because it likes to sometimes bubble and then get caught in my zipper. So I always make sure, like from the back side, I am tugging it away. I'm not going to top stitch mine yet, only because I want to switch to the purple and I still have the black thread in. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to attach my other side. So we're just going to repeat the process of folding in. And then the only thing that you really want to make sure is that when you are lining this up, that you are lining your left and right edges when you're making that zipper sandwich with the left and right edges of this recessed zipper panel here. So I'm going to fold these in and attach it, and I'll come back before I top stitch. All right, so I have just attached the second side in the same manner. And I have just put a clip here. It helps me when these are wrong side together. And so now we are just going to take to the machine and top stitch along the zipper. We're not top stitching the sides or anything over here yet. So I'm going to do both sides at once. And again, I'm just making sure that I really pull my lining away from the zipper. This is something that I have trouble with sometimes, and then it will get caught. And I'm going to use the larger stitch length, and I switch back to my purple thread so that way it will match. Okay, so I have just top stitched along each side of my zipper. I left my bobbin thread so it matches underneath. So now we're going to do a method that's going to close these raw edges here. So we're going to pick one side that we are going to roll up to like the zipper tape. So I'm starting with the one furthest away, and I'm just rolling this because now on this side, we are going to open this up. So I'm bringing my exterior to the top, and then I'm flipping it and bringing my lining to meet it. So that way our zipper's in the middle. Kind of reminds me of like a burrito. And I am clipping these right sides together. And we are going to sew across here at the given seam allowance. And this is going to close up this raw edge for us. So I'm excited to try this method. I've never done a recessed zipper like this. Okay, and I left my clips on here on this side on the end because we want to make sure that our edges are still folded under. That's how we don't get that raw edge on the short sides. So I'm going to take it to the machine and sew at the given seam allowance along this raw edge here. Okay, so I've just sewn across the top edge here. So now we need to turn this right side out. And this might take a little bit of maneuvering. I don't have any tool. Like I have one to turn tubes for like a scrunchie, but I just don't think it would work for this here. And this is going to take a little bit of time because I used that waterproof canvas. So it is a little bit stiffer. I might take it and use a blow dryer on it, but for now I'm just gonna maneuver and try to turn this right side out the best I can, And I'm doing that by kind of pulling on the short edge going one way and then the zipper from the inside coming the other. I do know they make some turning tools, so if you have them, definitely use it because this is quite tight. All right, and it's going to take a little while, so I'm going to do the rest of it off camera just to not waste time. And like I said, I might use some that blow dryer on it to warm up this waterproof canvas, and it will help it turn a little bit easier. All right, so I just finished turning that side. It took a while. That was honestly really difficult. I found that once I could kind of loop my zipper tail through and pull that, it did help. And I did use the blow dryer. And I'm using the Theratex and the waterproof canvas. So I definitely wouldn't recommend a vinyl for this step. That would be immensely difficult. Okay, so now we're just going to continue and do the other side. So we're rolling up that first side here, bringing these two right sides together, and just repeating the process. So I'm making sure that my edges are folded back and lined up, and I'll clip all the way across. And so I'm going to do the rest of this off camera because it is the same exact steps that we just did, sewing the side and then pulling it through. Okay, so I have just finished turning that out, and actually this side went a lot faster. What I did is I pulled apart my zipper as I was turning it, and that made it turn really, really easy. So I definitely recommend that. And I just zipped it back up using a zipper pull, but I didn't leave the pull on yet. I'm going to put that on at the very end. So now you want to flatten these out. Definitely iron them if you have a material that can. And we're going to take it to the machine and we're just going to top stitch the short sides. You don't want to go across the zipper. You want to do 4 separate top stitching. So 1, 2, and then on this side here, 3, 4. That is just going to close up our alternates.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so I have just top stitched along all 4 short sides. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. So now I'm going to put my zipper pull on. And again, I'm just doing that by hand. I split my zipper, start on the right hand side, put it the left, not pushing it all the way, just kind of so it balances there. And then I usually can just gently push it down with my pointers. And now that once that's on, we are going to either put metal zipper ends, or you could do like a 4-fold of fabric on each side and create a zipper end. I have the metallic ones. These are ones that I carry in my shop. And so how I do that is I take my zipper tape, I fold each side in. So the left underneath the zipper, then the right underneath the zipper. You could put a piece of double-sided tape or something to hold it there. You could also put some glue inside of your zipper end. I usually don't. I've never had a problem with them coming off.
It just
So you want to make sure that your fold is small enough to fit in that opening. And sometimes I have to wiggle it to help maneuver it. And you want to push it down as far as it can go, because we are installing it with a screw. And so I have it pretty far down, and I can see my purple zipper tape through that hole. So I know that I'll catch my zipper tape. And so it comes with these tiny little screws, and I have this magnetic screwdriver. And then I just use that. I love the magnetic one, so I don't have to try to balance the screw. It helps so much. And I find it most helpful to have it laying flat on my table so I can put the pressure of the screwdriver right, and then that's screwed all the way in. And then you're just going to repeat for the other side. Great, so now we have our recessed zipper panel with our zipper pull and our 2 zipper ends. And we're going to set that to the side. We are going to need our lining panels. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. I just grabbed the one with the zipper pocket first. And then our 2 lining side panels. So just like we did with the exterior fabric, we are going to put these right sides facing down, and we are going to sew them the same way. The only difference is in the pattern, it gives you a larger seam allowance. This is so our lining fits a little bit more snug than the exterior, that you don't get that bulky lining. The only thing is, instead of doing that wider seam allowance the whole way down on each side, I'm going to start at the smaller seam allowance. So when we sewed the exterior, if you look in the pattern, it's a different seam allowance. I'm going to start at that measurement and about an inch or 2 down. So I'm going to start up here, and about an inch or 2 down, I'm going to increase to that larger seam allowance the rest of the way down. And that's just so when we put our bag together at the top, we need the same seam allowances so it fits nicely. And I'm worried that if I do the larger the whole way down, I might have some fabric to ease in. So I'm going to take this to the machine and stitch on both sides, the left and the right side, at the given seam allowance. And because I'm sewing both sides have that PVC, I'm going to put my Teflon foot on. Okay, so I've just stitched on the left and right side. You can see where the seam allowance increases a little bit. So now we're going to add our lining interior panel. So the same exact way, we're going to open up these flaps, put our panels right side together, and then line up. I'm just turning it again so I can see easier to make sure that I'm clipping my seam correctly. So again, I'm clipping both sides, shifting this one so I can get the edge. Sometimes I find it easier to kind of like hold it up in the air closer to me when I'm clipping. So whatever works best for you to make sure that you're getting it accurately. And we are going to repeat the same exact step for this side panel here. And I'm not going to do this one in a time lapse because it's the same step. Okay, so I have just stitched on both sides. So again, it's kind of like we had our exterior, and we're going to put our bottom panel on in the same exact way. I never changed out to purple thread, but it works out good because you can really see it. So I'm attaching this in the same way that we did the exterior. So I'm lining my short sides first, I'm going to do one at a time. So I am just opening them up so my edges line up. Makes it easier for me to clip. It's a little bit thick on this side because that's where the slip pocket is. It should line up perfectly. And so now I'm going to take it to the machine, and just like with the exterior, I'm going to stitch from that stitch length here, that seam allowance, to the seam allowance down here. This one's in black, so it's a little harder to see. So I'm only going between those seam allowances. And I'm not going to do this in time lapse because it's the same exact step as the exterior. So I'm going to put this short side on and then repeat the process for the other short side. And just a reminder, you want your fabrics right sides together. So this is my wrong side out, and this is my wrong side out of that bottom as well. Okay, so I have both my short sides sewn. So now we're repeating the process for the long sides. I'm just stretching it out to make it taut, and then going to clip. And again, we're sewing from that seam allowance to seam allowance. And that is going to give us that nice square bottom, just like it did for the exterior. So it gets a little bit tricky. You can see where it's kind of like, like my stitching shifted a little bit. So I'm basically going from this seam allowance here. Actually, it's easier to see on this side. I'm going from that purple seam allowance to this purple seam allowance, and then going to repeat for the other long side of the bottom. And again, it's the same steps as the exterior, so I'm not going into quite as much detail for the lining. Okay, so I have just marked the lines on each side of my lining. It gives you a measurement from the center down and then across. It's easier if you turn this right side out to mark it, and I marked mine in chalk because you want to be able to remove it. So now you're going to need your recessed zipper panel. And if you have a particular way that or direction you want this to go, I want mine opening left to right. And I want usually I put my zipper pocket on the back, but I want my slip pocket on the back for this one because I want my slip pocket to be against the trolley sleeve side and not have two slip pockets together because I could think that could be bulky. So what you're going to do is, it might be easier to lay it flat like this. Yeah. And so you are going to line up your recessed zipper with that chalk line or that measurement. And it's probably easiest to pin this in place. I do not want to do pins, so I am going to center this and just use some Scotch tape to kind of hold it in place. So you want your right side of your lining facing up, and you want the right side of your recessed zipper panel facing up. And so you are going to stitch on one side all the way across, top stitching, and back stitch really well at the beginning and the end. You're going to see this top stitch. It goes almost to the corners, so you should be fine. I'm going to kind of hold this as I sew, more so than pinning it, but whatever helps you hold this in place. So I'm going to take that to the machine, and again, top stitch all the way across on the edge, back stitching really well at the beginning and the end. All right, so I have just stitched this on. I used the purple so it blends in so nicely. You can barely even tell that it's just kind of top stitched on. And my recessed zipper panel it extended a little bit past that chalk line and went almost edge to edge, which is fine because that means that the bag's going to seal up perfectly. So if you have the same problem, you can kind of just center it and it should still fit. And so now we're just going to flip it around and do the same exact thing. We're going to line up the other side with our chalk line and bring it to the machine and stitch just like what we did. I found it easiest to stitch like this on my machine, sliding this part here under my presser foot and just kind of lining it up as I go along. If your lining sticks out a little bit, I probably should have poked it out a little bit better, but it does blend in with my bag, so I'm not worried about it. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat this now for this right hand side. All right, so now the recessed zipper is attached and it fits like perfectly. I'm really, really excited about this. You want to open up your recessed zipper. I love that there's tabs on, or not tabs, but excess zipper on both sides. It means that it can open up really, really wide. So now we want to leave our lining wrong side out. You want to open up your top zipper and you want to make sure that your interior zipper is open because this is how we're turning our bag. And so now this is where it's going to get a little tricky. Let me see if I can zoom out a bit. Okay, so now that you have both your zippers open, we have our lining wrong side out. We need our exterior right side out. And so now you want to match it up however you want. So I want my trolley sleeve against my slip pocket. So this is my zipper pocket of my lining. This is my slip pocket of my exterior. So I'm going to put my exterior inside of my lining. So exterior wrong side out. Exterior right side out, lining wrong side out. And so you want to make sure your lining zipper is tucked down. You want to make sure your handles are tucked down. The only thing sticking up is your the ends of the handle tab and the ends of your D-ring tab. And so now, if you did the correct seam allowances, this should line up perfectly. So I'm starting at each corner, lining up my seam allowances. You can, I think I'm going to nest them. I pushed them both to the exterior. No, I'm going to do both to the exterior. They're not really that, thick. If they're thick, you might want to nest them. If they're not, you could push them one way or the other. So I just did mine to the exterior, and I'm clipping along here, and it fits perfectly. So now I'm turning it around to the other side. You could line up all four corners first, but I'm just preferring to do it side to side. And again, those side seams should match up perfectly. And if you need to ease stuff in, you can kind of give it a little tug and try to straighten it out. It's okay if they don't match up so perfectly. A lot of times you have some wiggle room that you could ease the fabric in. And so now once I have the long sides, now I'm going to clip my short sides here. Okay, and once you have it clipped all the way around, we are going to bring it to the machine. I'm going to sew it probably from the inside like this and like a cylinder and move it around. So we are going to stitch at the given seam allowance all the way across the top. Make sure, again, that your handles are pushed down. Nothing is sticking out except for the little bit of the ends. None of the actual handles you can grab or the D-rings. Right, so I have just stitched all the way around, and I actually did 2 lines of top stitching just because I really wanted to make it extra secure where the handles are and where the D-ring connectors are, because these are going to get, you're traveling or possibly using this for traveling. It can be heavy. I am going to cut down just my D-rings because those are a little bit long. I'm not cutting down this webbing. You can see where it's a little bit frayed already. If you are using a polyester webbing, you could singe the end, just melt it. I do this sometimes. I don't like that it's burning plastic essentially, but you definitely don't want your handles coming unraveled, especially after all your hard work. Okay, so once you have this all sealed up, we left our zipper pockets open. So our zipper pocket and our main zipper. So this is our zipper pocket in the lining. I'm reaching up through. I'm grabbing the exterior part of my bag, and I left quite a large opening in the zipper lining. So I am just maneuvering this through. If you need to heat it up with a blow dryer, go ahead and do that. Mine's turning pretty well. I also didn't put extra interfacing on the base, so that is definitely helping. Great, and I'm going to continue just turning this off camera. And once you have it turned, you want to straighten everything out. Okay, so I have completed turning it right side out. Now in the instructions, she has you seal up the zipper pocket and the lining first before top stitching. I prefer to top stitch first. And I prefer to do that because sometimes this doesn't always like pop out perfectly and align. So I like to be able to reach into my lining if I need to and kind of use my hand and press along that seam. And so in order to get a good top stitch, I also clip, and that's so this doesn't roll back on itself, because that can definitely happen. So I'm just going along, lining up my top, preparing it to top stitch. And like I said, clipping it is what works best for me. I reaching up through that lining, really poking it through. Especially you can see here, it didn't turn all the way. So being able to reach inside is really important to me. Okay, so I'm going to take my time and clip this all the way around, and I'll come back on before top stitching. Okay, so I have just clipped all the way around. So now I'm going to take it to the machine and top stitch. When you're top stitching, you want to make sure your handles are facing out. You don't want to accidentally top stitch them down. That would be really bad. So go ahead and take your time, and I am just going to backstitch. My thread is purple, so it's going to match really nicely. And again, just taking my time going all the way around, top stitching the top. Okay, so I have just top stitched all the way around. It looks great. I used the purple on the exterior and black for the interior, and I'm trying to find where I backstitched. It blends in so nicely that you can't even tell. So now that I have top stitched, this is where I personally like to close my zipper pocket. Like I said, you could have done this previous. I just like being able to reach into my bag if I need to while I'm top stitching. And so we have already sewed a little bit, like about an inch in on each side. So usually I just like take my pointer fingers and gently tug, and it usually just kind of falls into place. And if you want to take like your chopstick and poke out the corners a little bit better, you can. I don't normally, just for the sole fact that this zipper pocket is going to be pushed back inside. So it's okay if they're not pushed out all the way this way, because they're going back in anyways. So I'm just clipping across the entire opening, and I switched my thread back to black, both so it's going to match this and for my crossbody strap. So now I'm going to take this to the machine and just top stitch our pocket closed. Okay, so I have just stitched the pocket closed, the inside zipper pocket. So now I'm going to tuck that back inside. And I also took a second before coming back on to wipe off my chalk marks on the bag. I just noticed I didn't do it on the handle. I still need to do that. But now that that is tucked in, that completes our bag. So we have our backside here with that trolley slip pocket. We have our regular slip pockets on the front. The inside with our two slip pockets and our zipper pocket. And I love that we have the extra space with the zipper. It just works so nicely to tuck that down inside. And you can see that what I really like is that this recessed zipper fits really close, that you're not going to have problems with people being able to reach in your bag at all. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside and grab everything that I need for my crossbody strap. Right, so I have my webbing here. In the tutorial, she says that you can, sew your crossbody the way that you prefer. So I'm going to show you how I prefer. I'm using the 1.5 inch seatbelt webbing. And so I have my slider. And so I always start on the left-hand side. And I go up and over that center bar. And then I'm not going to leave this as I'm leaving it raw edge, but I'm not going to just fold it over and leave it so you can see it. I'm going to fold it over about 1/2 inch. You can measure this out, but I just kind of estimate it. And then now I'm folding it back onto this side. So if we're looking from the top, it will look like this. Our slider's to the right. This is folded under to the left. And now you could do a little bit more or less, and I'm going to take it to the machine. You could rivet this, but I am going to clip it in place. It's sliding right now as I'm trying to push this, line it up. So I'm going to clip it into place, and I'm just going to stitch. And I'd like to do 2 lines of top stitching just to make sure it is extra secure, and you want to put it as close to this bar as possible. Okay, so I have my 2 rows of top stitching. You can see from the back, I don't have that raw edge, which I really like. You could use a strap end if you wanted. When it comes to seatbelt webbing, I usually just sew it, not use rivets or anything too fancy. All right, so now I am going to make sure that this is straight. And I'm going to come all the way to the end and add my first snap hook. And I want to make sure that it's, I don't know if you can see, yeah, so we can see it all the way here. It kind of curves under. So I'm creating like this loop. So we want to hang it hanging down. And so now you are going to take your right hand side, you're going to go up on the right, down on the left. And so if you pull this tight all the way, you will see that your snap hook is hanging here. So definitely check this first. I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally had my snap hook going the wrong way or twisted this webbing. So now on this last side, you are going to put your snap hook on. And again, I'm going over the top. I want to make sure that I am not twisting this. So again, you want to double check that it's straight before you sew. And just like what we did with that center bar, I'm going to fold this over on itself. It's a little bit stiff, so I'm trying to maneuver it and get it so it's like lined up. There we go. And clip it into place. And I'm going to bring this to the machine and do 2 lines of stitching as well. And like I said, you probably want to check, see if I slide this forward, I can tell that I have folded it to the back to the correct way. Because I can't, again, I've reversed this so many times. Okay, so that finishes up the crossbody strap. Mine is 60 inches. I'm 5'2", and I think that fits perfect for me. I like it extra long. That's why I could wear it longer or shorter. And I find that that length gives a lot of adjustment for a wide range of bodies. And so now we can just attach it to our bag. And so that completes our essential travel bag. All right, so we have just finished up our essential travel bag. I am absolutely obsessed. I cannot wait to take this on vacation with me. It has the slip pocket in the front, the tabs on the side for a crossbody strap, the trolley sleeve in the back to be able to slide over your suitcase. The rectangular bottom that comes together so nicely. You don't have to worry about sewing like a curved gusset. Our recessed zipper in the top that I've already opened. You can see our zipper pocket on one side and the slip pocket on the other. So I absolutely love this bag. Thank you so much, Cindy, for allowing me to film the tutorial. I'm going to have all her information in the description so you can join her social media where you can find this pattern. So I highly, highly recommend, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.